In our number 10 spot, we have Operation London Bridge. Right away on the day of the Queen's passing, Operation London Bridge was to come into effect. Prime Minister Liz Truss would have received the news of Her Majesty's passing right away, and she would have been one of the first people to have been told. This message would have been delivered by the Queen's private secretary. The civil servants would have been notified next, and the media outlets, starting with the royal social media platforms. The flags would then be moved to half-mast. Then the Ministry of Defense would do a gun salute, and a minute of silence would be taken around the country. The royal family zoomed into Balmoral to see the Queen just before she passed, and were there by her side as she left us. The British people observed a double rainbow over Buckingham Palace that day. If you're enjoying this video so far, please give us a thumbs up as it'll really help us out. In our number 9 spot, we have King Charles's first step. The day after the Queen passed, right away it was instructed that Prince Charles will be sworn in as the new sovereign by the Accession Council. This means that he will be proclaimed king until his coronation or until he decides to step down and give the throne to his eldest son, Prince William. If all goes well, this should happen the morning after the Queen's death at 10 a.m. His title will change to King Charles III. In our number 8 spot, we have the Accession Council and further title changes. The second part of the Accession Council is attended by the king and other senior royals. For the first time in history, we will get to see this centuries-old ritual because it will be broadcasted live. So cool. Most of us alive today wouldn't have been around or old enough to have witnessed the Queen's coronation, so this is very exciting. Prince William, the next in line to the throne after King Charles, will be given the new title of Duke of Cornwall, and Kate will become Duchess of Cornwall, replacing Camilla, who technically becomes Queen, but she will be given the title of Queen Consort, a wish made by Queen Elizabeth before she passed. His title will change to King Charles III. This day has also since passed, and I must say I'm actually surprised that King Charles didn't decide to pass the crown on to his son. I think a lot of the British people expected him to, but in any case, Prince William will eventually have his day as king. Following the Accession Council, the king will return to Buckingham Palace to meet with the senior politicians and church leaders. In our number 7 spot, we have Operation Unicorn. Since the Queen passed away at Balmoral, the family has strict instructions upon returning her to Buckingham Palace. This is called Operation Unicorn. Operation Unicorn will be activated, and it will mean that the Queen's coffin will be transported to London via royal train. If Operation Unicorn fails, then a new operation takes effect, and that is Operation Overstudy. This is a strict instruction for the coffin to then be transported by plane. The Prime Minister and ministers will welcome the coffin upon arrival at Buckingham Palace. In our number 6 spot, we have D-Day plus 3. D-Day represents Death Day, so about 3 days after the Death Day, Charles will receive the motion of condolence at Westminster Hall, and then he will begin his tour of the United Kingdom as the new king. He has been instructed to attend a service in Northern Ireland at St. Anne's Cathedral in Belfast. In our number 5 spot, we have the rehearsal plus D-Day plus 5. While King Charles III is on his tour, a rehearsal for Operation Lion will be taking place. Operation Lion is when the Queen's coffin will be carried from Buckingham Palace to the Palace of Westminster. This will be around D-Day plus 5. When the coffin arrives, a service will be held in Westminster Hall. In our number 4 spot, we have D-Day plus 6 to D-Day plus 9. Operation Feather is now going to be in effect. Such interesting titles. I wonder if the Queen chose them herself. When I die, I'm gonna leave strict instructions for my loved ones and call it Operation Magical Fairy. Instead of taking my coffin on a tour, I shall instruct my family to go on a tour around the world with my ashes. I better start saving though, so they can do that. They definitely don't have a royal budget to complete this wish. Anyways, back to Operation Feather. It states that for the next 3 days, the coffin will stay at Westminster and the Queen will lie in state, so visitors can come to pay their respects. The coffin will be placed on a raised box and will be available for 23 hours a day for those 3 days. I would have thought that it would only have been for select people such as friends, family, and politicians, but apparently anyone can visit. There is expected to be about 10,000 plus people, so I would leave now to line up. I bet you the line is going to be insane, like standing in Times Square on New Year's. There probably won't be anywhere to move. I wish I lived in England. I would definitely have gone to pay my respects. The public will be able to pay their respects as of September 14th, 2022. In our number 3 spot, we have more traveling for King Charles. King Charles is expected to travel to Wales during this time to receive a third motion of condolence at the Welsh Parliament. This is projected to happen around D-Day +7. The king will also attend a service at Llandaff Cathedral in Cardiff. Also during this time, the rehearsals for the funeral will be taking place. On the morning of September the 19th, 2022. In our number 2 spot, we have the funeral. The funeral for Queen Elizabeth II will be held at Westminster Abbey. Processions will take place in London and Windsor, and a committal service will take place at St. George's Chapel at Windsor Castle. The Queen is to be buried in the castle's King George VI Memorial Chapel. There will be a 2-minute silence at midday in the country. Before she passed, the Queen agreed that her funeral day would be a day of national mourning, and so it effectively became a bank holiday. Apparently though, if the funeral falls on a weekday, the government does not plan to order businesses to let their employees have a day off. The businesses can individually decide on this though. In our number 1 spot, we have mourning plus the king's official coronation. Following the funeral, the country will go into a period of mourning. Even though King Charles would have automatically become king when the queen passed, his official coronation will not take place for some time. It is predicted to be months later or as late as a year after. Queen Elizabeth had her coronation more than a year after she had been ruling. The delay is most likely due to the fact that there will be an enormous amount of planning for the event that will need to take place. The ceremony will most likely take place at Westminster Abbey, as it has done for the last 900 years. It will be done most likely by the Archbishop of Canterbury, as it has been done since year 1066.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have the rules of the road. This rule is probably one of the craziest things I've ever heard, but I guess it's been around for quite a while and I just had no idea. Turns out the monarch is the only person in the UK who is allowed to drive without a legal license or even license plates. I mean, what? That's so insane. I didn't expect the king to have to take a driver's test like everyone else, but just having a rule that allows them, if they chose, to drive without any idea how? It truly is just absolutely bizarre. The good news is though, which makes this rule make a lot more sense, is that, of course, rather than driving himself, King Charles' chauffeur will be much more responsible for most of the driving for the king. Let's just hope the chauffeur has their driver's license. In our number 9 spot today, we have the armed forces. One of the most intimidating parts of his new role is that King Charles will now become the head of the armed forces. This means that it is his responsibility, and he is the only person who can declare when the country is at war and when the war is over. Of course, he won't be doing this entirely alone. He needs to follow the advice and guidance of the government, can't just randomly declare war. The perhaps good news is that the new king has held quite close ties to the armed forces throughout his life, even spending time in the Royal Navy and taking flying instruction from the Royal Air Force during his second year at Cambridge University. Of course, the hope is that he won't be in a position to make these difficult decisions, but when or if he's faced with them, we can hope he makes the proper decisions for the country. In our number 8 spot today, we have the church. King Charles won't only be the head of the armed forces, but he will also become the head of the church in England. Quite a jump from talking about war and being the one who makes those kinds of decisions to being the head of the church, where things are hopefully quite the opposite, more peaceful. This is a post that British monarchs have held since the church was founded by King Henry VIII in the 1500s, and it appears as though the tradition will carry on. In this role, it means that King Charles will be responsible for appointing archbishops and bishops to their role. The king will be, of course, advised in this role by the Prime Minister. It is said that the king is religious in his own right, and that he has already spoken about how his personal faith has informed his approach to leadership. In our number 7 spot today, we have gifts. The king has a duty to accept all of the gifts he receives, and not only that, but he has to accept them graciously. Apparently, it is actually quite customary for the royal family to receive every gift that is handed to them during royal engagements. Of course, people are always wanting to gift the royal family things, but like the Queen once had the power to do, it is now up to King Charles who in the family is allowed to keep the gifts they've been given. That would be a super strange meeting, but hey, there are some weird rules the royal family has to follow. In our number 6 spot today, we have never travel in pairs. This is one travel rule that certainly makes sense, but it is quite dark when you really think about it. This rule is says that any heirs to the throne are not allowed to travel together, which means that the king is going to be traveling differently than he once used to. This is of course in case some sort of accident happens. Not every heir to the throne would be injured or perhaps killed. It's definitely very smart and very sensible, but it has got to be grim, just constantly preparing for the worst thing to happen. It is of the utmost importance to the royal family that they preserve the line to the throne. This travel rule is actually becoming more frequent among even other people outside of the royal family who can afford this type of luxury. In our number 5 spot today, we have the black outfit. Another travel rule that the family must follow is in regards to an item they must bring with them. It is unusual to see the royal family dressed in black, despite when a specific occasion calls for it, but every time they travel, they are required to bring an all-black outfit with them. This is again to prepare for the worst case scenario. If they are away on a trip and someone important passes away, they need to ensure that they are ready with the appropriate clothing for when they are able to touch down on their home soil. This is pretty practical, but also definitely pretty morbid. I mean, imagine having to fuss over what you're gonna wear when you're actually just mourning the loss of someone close to you. Certainly wouldn't be the top of my list for me, but clearly I am no royal. In our number 4 spot today, we have no touching. There is a rule that you just cannot touch a royal. I'm sure there are a multitude of reasons for this, most to do with security, but aside from a lucky handshake, you really are supposed to keep your distance. I suppose it's because I live the life of a regular person, but I feel like that would be so sad. I feel like you'd be lacking in so much connection with a ton of interesting people, and wouldn't you just be dying to hug some of the nice people you meet? Maybe that's just the Canadian in me. Apparently this is part of the reason why the queen always wore gloves. She of course shook a lot of hands while out making her royal appearances, and the same will likely go for the new king. Maybe he'll take up gloves as a fashion accessory, just like his mother. In our number 3 spot today, we have the dinner choices. There are plenty of strange rules when it comes to royal dinner etiquette, but this one might be the most strange. I'm not exactly sure if King Charles enjoyed much seafood during his time as the Prince of Wales, but if he did, those days might be coming to an end rather soon. Apparently, the palace recommends that His Highness not indulge in shellfish. No shrimp, no lobster, you get the idea. This is meant to be for his safety, of course, because apparently it is believed that shellfish causes food poisoning more than any other type of food, so unfortunately the king won't be heading to the local Red Lobster anytime soon. In our number 2 spot today, we have no autographs. This is a rule that the king won't be much of a stranger to, as it's a rule for the entire royal family. Of course, in this day and age, people often ask their favorite celebrities for autographs, or more likely now, a selfie, but the royal family isn't allowed to stop for these kinds of interactions. For autographs, it makes a ton of sense. It's a safety measure to ensure that no forgers can learn to mimic the handwriting of royalty. I totally understand that. For selfies, it's less of an official rule and more just to do with etiquette. When meeting a member of royalty, it is important to never turn your back on them, so asking the new king to squeeze in behind you for a photo would definitely be discouraged. An act of admiration might just have the new king feeling a little bit slighted. In our number 1 spot today, we have opinions. This is probably my favorite of all of the rules we have today, which is exactly why I saved it for the number 1 spot. During the king's time as the Prince of Wales, Charles has certainly been known for having quite a vocal approach to different social issues and whatever the current affairs have been. He's an outspoken individual, and that doesn't always sit well with people. Fair enough, but now that he's the king, he does have some different expectations. He is now expected to not make his constituents feel uncomfortable or alienated, which means that he won't be allowed to be such a champion of certain issues. This basically means that the king needs to keep some more of his opinions to himself, which I'm sure is gonna make some people happy.
Coming up at our number 10 spot, he must fly alone. Okay, not alone, but Prince William cannot fly with another royal heir. Yes, the royals, Prince William and Prince Harry, are not allowed to travel together in case something happens to the plane. The succession of the royal family is very important to them, and this is a good way to protect the bloodline. In all of the Queen's reign, this rule only had an exception one time. Even with Prince William's kids, Princess Charlotte and Kate flew together once, and Prince George stayed home. The royals are allowed to travel with their offspring up to 9 months, it is said, but then after that this rule comes into effect. If you're enjoying this video, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. bias. In our number 9 spot, we have limited contact. This one seems obvious to me, but I could be biased from living in England as a child and from having a British family. But you're not supposed to get too close to William and the British family. They have a strict rule of limited touching with the public, as they do shake a lot of hands, and honestly, it's probably for safety and sanitary reasons. The British press is quite protective of the royals, and there has been an occasion where they have been very angry with a celebrity when they don't respect that rule, and they become too touchy with the royals. LeBron James, for example, got some backlash for this and was told that he was breaking royal protocol. Some question whether he even knew about this, but usually people are told the rules before meeting the royals, so it's most likely that he was debriefed. But in any case, he at least offered up some cupcakes from his hometown of Ohio to make up for it. That's cute. Makes me think that Ohio has some, pretty good cupcakes, and now I want to go to Ohio. In our number 8 spot, we have British Airways. Prince William must always fly with British Airways. Unless he's taking an American domestic flight, all of the royals actually must fly the British airline, British Airways. Since the royals are funded by the British tax dollar, they try to do what they can to make sure that the Brits always benefit, and that is why they fly only British Airways. I've actually flown with British Airways once, and it was a lovely trip, so I would recommend. But honestly, now knowing that this is how the royals fly, am I taking any other airline ever again? Probably not. In our number 7 spot, we have no Monopoly. This is a funny one to me. Prince William is not allowed to play Monopoly. None of the royals are. I truly wish we could be a fly on the wall and learn the reasoning behind this. We can only assume that it is one of possibly 2 reasons, maybe there are more. 1, they've already got everything and it would possibly encourage greed. And 2, perhaps they are a very competitive household and it would encourage competition. A little competition can be healthy, but Monopoly, does seem to bring out the worst in people. Someone always fights in my house when we play Monopoly. But in any case, the reasoning is unknown, just that no one's allowed to play it. In our number 6 spot, we have 12 bodyguards. Prince William, of course, has to follow strict rules about bodyguards that have been put in place to keep him protected. One of them is to always have 12 bodyguards around him, especially when he travels. The royals always have trained snipers, bodyguards, and doctors with them when they travel. Their safety is of the utmost importance. Apparently, it is said that William and Kate's wedding was about $36 million in total, and the security alone was about $32 million of that amount. Wow. If only we lived in a world where everyone respected everyone and people didn't need protection, because that's a lot of money. In our number 5 spot, we have no selfies or autographs. Prince William is not allowed to take a selfie with you, so don't even try. Selfies are frowned upon. The US ambassador once told OK magazine that, quote, "The Queen disapproves of selfies because the eye contact doesn't suit her." Whether this rule will be lifted since the Queen has passed, it's unclear. Prince William is also not allowed to sign autographs, but honestly, that's probably for the better. He would probably have carpool tunnel syndrome at this point if he had to sign autographs for all of these years. Also, the royals aren't celebs, they're royals. They work for the people, so it makes sense that they don't do autographs, as that is purely something celebrities do. In our number 4 spot, we have no shellfish. Prince William is not allowed to have shellfish. In fact, none of the royals are. Shellfish have been deemed too high a risk to ever be eaten by the royals. William and the rest of the royals are also not allowed to have rare cooked meats, tap water in foreign countries, and spicy exotic foods. So this is where the stereotype of British people only liking bland food came from. All I can say is that my entire British family loves spicy food, so that stereotype doesn't work for them. The poor royals though. They will never know what a delicious spicy ramen tastes like. In our number 3 spot, we have an all-black outfit. Prince William must travel with an all-black outfit in case of a funeral. Not just him though, all of the royals must abide by this rule. Super morbid, but hey, I guess it's convenient if something does happen. I wonder if this is a rule from back in a time when cars didn't exist and one would have to travel by horse and buggy, so it would make it hard to go back home and retrieve your funeral outfit. Or perhaps a time when it wouldn't have been as easy to just pop into into a store and buy a black suit. But in any case, an interesting rule that has stayed in place for many, many moons. In our number 2 spot, we have a strict dress code. Prince William has a very strict dress code. You will usually find him in dressed up attire with dress shirts and dress pants or dress shorts. For formal military events, since he served time in the military, he has been known to wear his uniforms to special events. He wore his Irish Guards uniform for his wedding to Kate in 2011, as he is an honorary rank of Colonel of the Irish Guards. For Queen Elizabeth II's funeral, the Prince of Wales wore the Royal Air Force No. 1 uniform with the Garter sash with the Royal Air Force pilot wings and the Garter Star Chest Order. Finally, in our number 1 spot, we have no public displays of affection. Prince William is not allowed to show any public displays of affection for Kate. The world went mad. I mean, I personally did, when Prince William and Kate shared their wedding kiss on the royal balcony in 2011. Everyone was calling their wedding absolutely perfect and that their connection is beautiful. But sadly, that is all we got to see, as they have never even held hands in the public eye since. They were allowed to before they were married, but not since. I really wonder if the rules will change once Prince William is king. It will be quite fascinating to see if Prince William makes a change and allows for more hand-holding and touching when he's king, as times have changed and perhaps the rules may be outdated now, but perhaps not. Would love to know your thoughts though in the comment section below.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have the royal proposals. This is a rule that dates all the way back to the Royal Marriages Act of 1772, so it's obviously a rule that's been around for quite some time. This rule states that all royal descendants must seek approval from the monarchy before proposing to their, hopefully, future spouse. This means that the now king, of course, had to ask his mother, Queen Elizabeth II's permission before marrying both Princess Diana as well as his now wife, Queen Consort Camilla. But the tides have changed for King Charles. He is now the man people will be coming to in order to seek his approval of their proposed nuptials. Now all I want to know is, what happens if he says no? That would be so awkward. Do you still propose? Do you throw the whole relationship out just because he said no? I have a lot of questions, but hopefully this is a situation we won't see arise anytime soon. In our number 9 spot today, we have a step behind. It is common royal practice to never turn your back to royalty, but of course at some points, royalty has to turn their back to each other, so there's gotta be some sort of hierarchy, right? During the marriage between Prince Philip and Queen Elizabeth II, he always had to walk a few steps behind her. I mean, she is the queen after all, and traditional rules would have a woman walk in front of a man. Again, we're talking traditional rules here, not modern ones, and the royal family really is a lot about traditions. With King Charles taking over the throne, while previously he likely waited for his wife Camilla to walk in front of him, the rules just may have changed. When allowed, the pair will likely be seen walking side by side, but since tradition would have it that the king ranks higher than a queen, he will likely be walking in front of her for the remainder of their marriage. In our number 8 spot today, we have one throne. This is a rule that has been around for the monarch for many years, and it really does make a lot of sense. The monarch is forbade or not allowed to sit on any foreign thrones. They aren't allowed to sit in any other throne other than their own. I mean, I can understand why, but this rule extends into fictional thrones even. A few years ago, Queen Elizabeth II even went to visit the set of Game of Thrones, and although the highly coveted Iron Throne was offered to her, she politely declined to sit on it for this exact reason. Queen Cersei would be pissed if she knew. Even if it's the throne of the Seven Kingdoms, the monarch isn't quite allowed to enjoy it. In our number 7 spot today, we have signals. When speaking to the queen and now presumably the king, you don't decide when the conversation is over. They do. The queen had her subtle way of signaling to people that she would like to end the conversation, and the new king will likely have to find his own way to politely do the same thing. The queen did this by moving her purse from her right arm to her left arm. This meant that it was time to stop talking. I'm assuming King Charles likely won't begin carrying a purse, so at this point only time will tell what becomes his signature move, but he certainly will need to have one. In our number 6 spot today, we have Monopoly. Apparently the royal family has a ban on the classic family board game Monopoly. I thought maybe it was because the royal family is too classy, maybe they were just too busy, maybe it was because it was an American game. I was just trying to rack my brain as to why they wouldn't be allowed to play Monopoly, but as it turns out, the reason is not surprising at all. When the Duke of York was presented with Monopoly as a gift, he was the one who revealed that it was banned in the royal household, and you want to know why? quote, "It gets too vicious." Of course! No one in their right mind can play Monopoly and still have a functioning family relationship after that. Monopoly is the most cutthroat game I've ever played. Can't believe I didn't guess that reason first. In our number 5 spot today, we have bad breath. On the last part of this list, I talked about how King Charles will likely have to stay away from eating shellfish, as it is thought to be a dangerous food that has the highest chance of causing food poisoning. As it turns out, however, the list of no-no foods is growing, and it now includes garlic. That's right, one of the bases of every good dish is banned for members of the royal family. They of course have many meetings and important visitors, and they want to make sure they don't have the uncomfortable moment of having stinky garlic breath. I mean, I guess they haven't heard of breath mints? Either way, the more I talk about it, the more I'm glad I'm not a royal. Just wait until they hear about coffee breath. In our number 4 spot today, we have no PDA. Okay, I've got a question. When you're with your partner or your significant other in public, are you the couple who is like all over each other, full of public displays of affection, or are you a little more reserved and you kind of save that stuff for home? Well, if you're the king, neither. There's a strict no PDA policy for all members of the royal family, but of course as king you have to lead by example. This PDA rule is strict too, so it is likely we won't even see the king and his wife holding hands at all. This is also the reason why we don't often see Kate and William holding hands, but ever since Harry and Meghan renounced their royalty, they likely can be seen with their hands clasped together. This rule is even more important when they are traveling. This could be a way to make sure they respect local customs, or perhaps it's just a rule to ensure they appear royal and respectful. In our number 3 spot today, we have politics. In history, the head of the monarchy held a special power when it came to politics, but over the last few hundred years, the role has become much more symbolic rather than political. You would of course think that perhaps members of the royal family might want to run for some sort of political position so as to gain this power back, but they are not allowed to do so at all. Not only can they not vote in any political elections, they also aren't allowed to run for political office. Personally, I think that makes a lot of sense. Imagine trying to run for office beside an actual member of royalty. It would be the biggest uphill battle. In our number 2 spot today, we have dinner etiquette. There is a very specific way of doing things when it comes to being a royal person at dinner time. The Queen had a specific conversation schedule, and so will King Charles. At the beginning of the meal, the new king will begin the evening by speaking to the person on his right. He will continue on and carry a conversation with whoever this may be until the second course arrives. At this point, he will then end that conversation and turn to the person on his left, who he will then speak with for the duration of the second course. Also, you better hope you finish your meal before the king does, because once he's done eating, so is everyone else. Don't spend too much time talking, you're on a time crunch. In our number 1 spot today, we have nicknames. Any member of the royal family is strictly forbidden from using a nickname. How boring is that? I thought this was strange, especially considering how one royal herself, Kate Middleton, is always called Kate. But apparently that is something that is only done by the media. What she actually goes by now, and what the rest of the royal family call her, is Catherine, her full name. If anyone was planning on calling up the new King Charlie, Chuck, or Chuckles, they might want to rethink their plans. Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have Queen Consort. Considering how long the Queen was in her position for, and just history in general, it's been a long time since we've had a Queen Consort. This has left some people confused over what consort really means, or why she has this title, so let's break it down. It was thought that Camilla would have been given the title of the inferior princess consort due to the controversy surrounding hers and Charles' marriage. Since her passing, the Queen, in a special announcement, said that Charles would inherit the throne after her death, and said it was her, quote, sincere wish that, when the time comes, Camilla will be known as Queen Consort as she continues her own loyal service. Camilla, now as Queen Consort, has the female equivalent of her husband's title, but she does not share the sovereignty of the king, nor does she share in his powers, either politically or military. Camilla will be crowned in her own ceremony, one that will be similar to her husband's, albeit a simplified version, but despite the Queen title, the consort part means that she does not hold any of the same power. This also raises the question as to why the Queen's husband, Prince Philip, was not named King Consort. This is due to the fact that historically, a king ranks higher than a queen, and of course, she was the queen, the head of the monarchy, not him. This left Philip without the king title so as to not steal the shine from her royal highness. In our number 9 spot today, we have the heir to the throne. Now that we're on the same page of why she is called the Queen Consort, we have another question of if something were to happen to King Charles III, would she then take over the throne? The answer is no. The consort part also means that she is not an heir to the throne. That is a right reserved for people born into the royal bloodline, while Camilla married into the family. Right now, Prince William remains the heir to the throne after Charles' reign is finished, and unless something insane and unexpected happens, that likely won't change. Here's the thing though, should King Charles pass away before Camilla does, what exactly happens to her title is a bit convoluted. This is because her stepson is the heir to the throne. Normally, should Prince William have been her son, she would go on to be Queen Mother, but that doesn't seem fitting as William's biological mother is the beloved late Princess Diana. Only time will tell what exactly happens in regards to that, but hopefully that is an issue that we won't have to deal with for a long while. In our number 8 spot today, we have the royal vocabulary. Of course, for the royal family, there are words and phrases that they're asked to stay away from. I'm sure a few of my personal favorites likely came to mind, but aside from curse words, there are normal everyday words that members of the royal family aren't allowed to use. According to Kate Fox, author of Watching the English: The Hidden Rules of English Behavior, there are dozens of everyday words that they aren't allowed to use, and this includes the word toilet. Apparently this is due to the French origins of the word, which seems a little extreme. Instead, royals are likely to be heard asking for the lavatory. This might be the least bizarre on this list, however, as dessert is also a word that they are meant to stay away from, instead switching it for something like pudding. Other words Kate listed also include patio, perfume, lounge, and couch. In our number 7 spot today, we have the feast tradition. This is perhaps one of the most bizarre royal family traditions I've ever heard of, and there's a lot of weird ones. Apparently, both before and after Christmas dinner, the royal family all weigh themselves. This personally sounds like a nightmare, but apparently this is to see how much people enjoyed themselves. Like, Grandma, you can tell by my stretchy pants I wore, I'm here to enjoy myself. You don't need to weigh me. Apparently this tradition dates back to the reign of King Edward VII, who was Queen Elizabeth's great-grandfather. He wanted to ensure his guests ate well, so he weighed them to make sure that everyone left sufficiently full. Definitely a very strange tradition that apparently Princess Diana didn't take too kindly to, and truly, can we even blame her? In our number 6 spot today, we have royal women. Women everywhere are no stranger to feeling unnecessary pressures to look and act a certain way, but that is most definitely extremely heightened when you're a woman in the royal family. There are tons of random rules for women, such as what hats they can wear and at what times, we'll get into that later, and what kind of clothes they can wear, but one of the absolutely weirdest rules in my opinion is about their coats. Apparently, it's unladylike to remove your coat in public, which is truly a memo I did not receive. So if a woman in the royal family wears a coat to a function, that coat has to stay on the entire time. Imagine, you guys, you're absolutely sweating, but you have no choice because it would seem unladylike? I feel like that is just some outdated rule that for some reason still continues to linger around. In our number 5 spot today, we have fascinators. Speaking of clothing rules for royalty, it is a long-standing tradition that royal women always wear a hat to a formal function. This rule originates from a time when women showing their hair in public wasn't the thing. Of course, around the 1950s, that began to change more, and now this rule is only seen for functions rather than like all public appearances. Although this rule is for formality, the hats are anything but conservative, however. Royal women over the years have donned some unbelievable and downright wild hats. I mean, we all saw what Princess Beatrice wore on her head to Prince William and Princess Kate's wedding in 2011. Or for Camilla, even the hat she wore to the Queen's funeral. The hat wear for royal women is certainly anything but boring. In our number 4 spot today, we have pets. As we all know very well, image is everything for the royal family, and that is down to the finest, smallest detail, including pets. It is well known that the Queen absolutely loved corgis, and how could we possibly blame her? But apparently, however, if a dog is not a corgi or a Labrador, it is socially looked down upon. Can't describe how insane that is, they're dogs. If you brought a dog who had just been rolling around in the mud everywhere with you, I could see why this wouldn't be as widely accepted among fancy social circles, but only giving the choice of a few random breeds seems kind of ridiculous. Apparently Meghan Markle even had to give up her beagle named Guy a few years ago before she joined the family, but of course she has since left and I'm sure is happy to own whatever dog she sees fit. In our number 3 spot today, we have greetings. One of the major changes for Camilla now that she is Queen Consort will be seen in how she greets other members of the royal family. It is customary for members of royalty to curtsy or bow upon greeting each other, but Camilla will no longer be required to do that. She is is the queen now, after all. Of course, other members will continue to need to curtsy or bow to her as they greet her, but Camilla is off the hook. That is, of course, until she meets other monarchs around the world. In these situations, when meeting other royal families in different places, she will still curtsy as a sign of respect. In our number 2 spot today, we have bright colors. If Camilla has a lot of black items in her wardrobe, she can say goodbye to wearing most of them unless she is going to a funeral. While less of a formal rule and more of just an unspoken one, this tradition has royal women refraining from wearing black outfits unless attending a funeral. The queen certainly was a part of this tradition, as can be seen in her many brightly colored outfits, and while it isn't a requirement to wear outfits as bright as the queen did, it is likely we will see Camilla following suit in some of these bright choices. Not only does it ensure that she is easy to spot in a crowd should she need any kind of assistance, it is also just pleasing and very welcoming to see someone dressed brightly. While traveling, although she likely won't wear it, Camilla must bring at least one all-black outfit with her, however, and this is in case of emergency. If someone unfortunately passes away while she is traveling, she needs to have this black outfit with her so that when she touches back on home soil, she can be dressed in appropriate mourning attire. In our number 1 spot today, we have the tiara traditions. One more rule for Camilla and what/when she is allowed to wear things on her head, we have to talk about tiaras or crowns. Tiaras must only be worn at indoor formal events during the evening. Apparently hats are never worn indoors after 6 p.m. because at that point, ladies would have changed into their evening dresses, which of course requires a completely different dress code and hat situation. Once out of the daytime fascinator attire, along with the evening dress comes tiaras as well as the family jewels. The only exception to this is on the wedding day. The bride of course can wear her tiara at any point during the day, but of course Camilla's wedding day has since passed. In fact, many royals don't even wear their first tiara until their wedding day, like Kate Middleton. What's interesting is that Camilla actually didn't wear a tiara during her wedding to Charles, but that could be because of how small the ceremony was, along with all of the controversy surrounding their marriage at the time.
Starting us off at number 10, they got married on the weekend. So apparently it is customary for royal weddings to be held on a weekday. The alleged reason being that the day becomes a bank holiday and all British citizens will receive that day off of work. In the past, other royal weddings chose Friday so as to give people a long weekend to look forward to, but Meghan and Harry didn't seem to follow this protocol and instead opted for a Saturday nuptial. This upset more than just the royal family, as many workers were annoyed they wouldn't get their usual extra day off. But truthfully, who knows what the reason was behind their unusual Saturday choice. Now, not that I'm trying to prescribe to any kind of superstition here, but after a bit of sleuthing, I also found another reason that royals may choose to marry on a weekday, and it's actually an old English folklore poem. The poem says, Monday for health, Tuesday for wealth, Wednesday best of all, Thursday for losses, Friday for crosses, Saturday for no luck at all. So maybe it's superstition or maybe it's to give a gift to the citizens, but either way, their weekend wedding was not well received. Coming in at number 9, a visit to Canada. Prior to the couple's engagement and subsequent nuptials, Meghan was filming some movie in Toronto when Harry happened to be doing a Caribbean tour. Now, according to royal family rules, if you are on tour, that is the only business you are permitted to be a part of. End of story. But on this particular tour, while on his way back, he happened to make a stop in Canada to visit Meghan, which was a big no-no. Rules dictate you may not combine official visits with anything deemed remotely personal, and so Harry making a pit stop in Canada to say hi to his then girlfriend was not viewed highly by his family and caused him quite a bit of heat. Coming in at number 8, they held hands in public. The monarchy is definitely known for the stiff upper lip mentality, but what also apparently falls into that category is a strict no PDA policy. And obviously it's not like anyone is surprised they don't allow royals to be macking on each other in press conferences or anything, but according to British etiquette rules, they aren't even allowed to hold hands in public. The reason behind this strict rule is that officially all royals are working representatives of the British monarchy, and therefore any display of affection is considered uncouth. But that didn't stop the couple, as they were frequently spotted holding hands and acting, well, like a normal couple couple in love. And despite the royal pushback, many actually liked seeing the affection and referred to it as refreshing and modern. Coming in at number 7, Meghan attended royal events prior to being married. Royal events are usually a very exclusive affair, and for good reason too. With so much of your life on blast in the tabloids, it's nice to be able to have a quiet moment with your family without anyone from the outside world having a judgment about it. Usually when it comes to the monarchy, you're not in until you say I do. That means Christmas celebrations are not typically observed by the girlfriend or the fiance, but back in 2017, apparently this seemed to be broken by Harry and Meghan when she was invited to spend the holidays with the family. Many were confused as even Kate had not been granted the same honor prior to marrying Prince William, and many people definitely had something to say about the whole ordeal. But despite all that, Meghan recounts having an amazing time, so maybe the reins on tradition are just loosening up a bit. Who knows? Next up at number 6, Harry walks behind Meghan. Within the monarchy lies its own very specific and very respected hierarchy. Whether you have thought about it too much or not, you probably already have a vague sense of who might be higher ranking than others. At the top, of course, you have the king, followed by his children, etc, etc. Now, what this means is that Harry, when they were still involved with the royal family, ranked higher than his wife, which meant he was supposed to walk in front of her, as is royal protocol. But whether it was Harry's doing, Meghan's doing, or a mixture of the two, they didn't seem bothered by breaking this rule, as Meghan was often seen walking in front of Harry, much to the chagrin of the royal family. Next up at number 5, a fashion faux pas. As with everything that is in relation to the crown, the way one dresses while representing the monarchy is taken very seriously. Generally, this means looking very polished, put together, and most importantly for women, in pantyhose. Now, just put aside the fact that Meghan tended to wear pants, which was something that was extremely unusual for a royal lady, but when she did wear dresses or skirts, she frequently opted for a bare leg, which not only is considered a fashion faux pas, but it actually goes against royal dress code. On top of this, she would frequently wear bright colored nail polish, open-toed shoes, and all black, all of which are considered to not be the way a royal lady should present herself to the public. However, I will say that even if she wasn't following all the rules, I think she always looked beautiful and elegant. I mean, it's not like she was showing up in jeans and a hoodie or anything, but listen, I'm just some random girl from Canada, and the royal family could care less what I have to say, so there you have it. Next up at number 4, Prince George. He may be Harry's adorable nephew of just 6 years, but that doesn't mean there aren't strict rules for how he is supposed to be addressed. Prince George, the eldest son of Prince William, is currently second in line for the royal throne after his father, of course, meaning that one day, should everything go to plan, he will be king, and as such must be addressed by his official royal title at all times, no matter how casual the circumstances may be. But on one Instagram birthday post for the young prince, Meghan and Harry commented without using his title, which did not go unnoticed. Many branded it as disrespectful, saying one day Prince George will have to teach them a lesson, which seems kinda like a big swing to take, but maybe that's just me. To be honest, I can't imagine they meant any harm, as it was simply a lovely birthday wish for the boy, but still a break of protocol amongst the royals, no less. Next up at number 3, no shoes. So something new that I learned while writing this for you guys is that apparently royals are strictly forbidden from removing their shoes under any circumstances. Now, sometimes this rule does make sense to me, I will admit. For example, during Meghan and Harry's official tour of Australia and New Zealand, Meghan was pictured on the last day having removed her heels during a welcome ceremony, which many were quick to jump down her throat about. And listen, I am not one to actively troll anyone on the internet, but I do get why taking off your shoes on an official business tour could be frowned upon. Although, let's be honest, we've all slipped off our uncomfortable shoes from time to time. But what I can't get on board with is the broad spectrum this rule applies to. Even when Harry and Meghan went to Bondi Beach for the last part of their tour and took off their shoes just as any normal person would on the beach, they were put on blast for their actions, and honestly, that's just wild to me. Coming in at number 2, unauthorized photos. According to the regulations outlined by the Royal Collection Trust, there is a scrupulous no photography or filming rule inside staterooms at Buckingham Palace. Additionally, any filming or photos taken within the rest of the palace that are wanted for marketing, commercial, or content purposes must always receive permission from the head of state, which at the time was the late Queen. This includes permission to have the photographer present as well as publishing of the photos. But apparently Meghan and Harry broke this rigid rule when not only was there footage of the palace in their new documentary that had not been approved by the Queen, they allegedly did not receive authorization for the camera crew to be there in the first place. So it was kind of a double whammy situation that was not well received by the family. And last up in our number 1 spot, we have politics. Because the royal family is considered to be their own kind of entity entirely, they are strictly forbidden from commenting on or displaying any kind of political alignment or opinion. And although it is not officially prohibited by law, the royal family refrains from voting in the British elections as it's deemed unconstitutional to do so. But as for Harry and Meghan, they don't seem to operate this way. Now, to be fair, Meghan has never crossed any lines in British politics, but she hasn't shied away from speaking out about the United States. In a conference while she held the title of Duchess of Sussex, Meghan urged Americans to vote as, quote, "we all know what's at stake," and even voted herself in the most recent election. Prior to her royal status, Meghan was very vocal about politics, and it seemed she wasn't going to give that part of herself up very easily. After the incident, many believed she should have been stripped of her title for breaking such strict protocols. But others came to her defense, saying she wasn't involving herself in British politics and that there is actually nothing saying she can't speak up about other countries. Either way, now no longer officially a member of the royal family, she is completely allowed to speak on what she believes is right without any kind of repercussions.
Starting our list off at number 10, Princess Diana. Prince Charles, the oldest son of the Queen, straight up admitted to having an affair with Camilla before his divorce from his first wife, Princess Diana. So in turn, Princess Diana addressed the relationship, and what happened during that famous 1995 interview with BBC, well, she couldn't have said it better if I'm being honest. Diana said, quote, "Well, there were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded." End quote. Diana also said she was in love with riding instructor Major James Hewitt during her marriage to Charles, so everybody had eyes elsewhere it seems. Now Diana and Charles did divorce in 1996, only 1 year before her tragic accident. Now later in 2005, he ended up marrying Camilla. Tragic, of course, but were there dark theories that followed? Yeah, way too many theories. Number 9, Princess Diana theories. Okay, Princess Diana's tragic untimely death occurred in Paris on August 31st, 1997. It of course was an accident blamed on her driver who hit a pillar in a tunnel. The driver was speeding at a high rate and alcohol was also in their blood system. But of course the theories, these dark conspiracy theories, followed for a very long time. Mohammed Al Fayed, Dodi's father, Diana's partner, who at the time was rumored to propose, his father, Mohammed, believes that Diana and Dodi were the victims of a deep royal family plot involving the British security services and one Prince Philip, who acted before the couple could even announce their engagement. So already we're starting to ask a little more questions, right? Okay, it's getting pretty deep. Number 8, the note. A note Diana wrote also hints towards her untimely demise. It's honestly pretty heavy. This note is a conspiracy in itself. After separating from Prince Charles, she sent this letter to her butler. It's an odd, accidental prediction. She says, "I'm sitting here at my desk today in October, longing for someone to hug me and encourage me to keep strong and hold my head high. This particular phase of my life is the most dangerous. Someone is planning an accident in my car, brake failure, and serious head injury in order to make the path clear for him to marry." End quote. Okay, let's unpack that, I guess. She continues here saying that he wants to marry a woman named Tiggy and that Camilla is nothing but a decoy. Now, that is a huge thing to drop here. As we know though, the last part was a little off. Charles did end up marrying Camilla, so that came true. The butler also later said the media had looked into it too hard, the whole letter incident. Apparently the letter was just a bout of anxiety that they made a bigger deal. And to be fair, there were attacks on the Queen so often. Like, dudes were trying left, right, and center just to run at the carriage, so. Boy Jones going through windows, it was a nightmare, I can't imagine. Number 7, the Great Fire. One of the most wild Nostradamus predictions ever. Let's talk about it. It reads, "The blood of the just will commit a fault at London. Burned through lightning of 23's the 6th. The ancient lady will fall from her high place. Several of the same sect will be killed. There are many people who believe that this entry here was actually one that predicted the Great Fire of London that occurred in 1666. The line 23's the 6th and times 20 by 3, then you add 6, you get 66. So yeah, there's some conspiracy math behind this, equation over here. But most importantly, it may also mention London and the royal family. And in real life, this fire really did affect them, of course, as well. Also, it is said by many that the reference to the lady here is actually another term for the kingdom. This means that Nostradamus was predicting that the kingdom was going to fall as a result of the Great Fire. Nostradamus is an odd one. He may be in here a couple times. He said some odd stuff. Number 6. Prince Charles the Vampire. Okay, yeah, some of these theories, they're a bit out there, I'll admit that. I didn't make them up. I wish I did, but I did not. Some believers out there actually think that Prince Charles is a vampire, like a vampire that sucks blood, like a vampire. Why? Because Prince Charles is related to Vlad the Impaler. The 15th century ruler who inspired the story of Dracula in Transylvania? Yeah, that one. Now, it's a fun theory that went about, but Prince Charles having a piece of Romania is actually helping out nature, dare I say. The prince has since been conserving forests and even got a property in the land, so yeah, he's not a vampire. Well, maybe, who's to say really, I don't know. I vote no. Number 5. King Henry II. Could Nostradamus have actually predicted the death of King Henry II, who at that point was actually a personal acquaintance of the prophet himself? Maybe. This certainly sounds like it. While at one point Nostradamus was seen addressing King Henry II as the most invincible King Henry of France, unfortunately Henry proved to be quite vincible when he met his gruesome death at age 40. It happened in the summer of 1559, and it was a terrible jousting accident gone wrong, and it left the king passing away shortly after from sepsis. This is a terrible story, but I told it because many think that Nostradamus actually called it first. He literally called the shots. The jousting accident saw the king having splinters driven into his eye and skull by one of his young soldiers. And the Nostradamus quote reads, "The young lion will overcome the older one." And it says that he will pierce his eyes through a golden cage, and that 2 wounds will ensure a cruel death. I'm not saying he did, I'm just saying the jousting and the definitely got close. He definitely got close. Number 4. Marriage or ploy. Ooh, I like these. Some Game of Thrones stuff. Here we go. These theories are just that. They're all theories online that people have leaned into and, looked into way too much. So when I mention shapeshifters in 3 minutes, don't be surprised, okay? That's all I'm saying. There's a theory online that you've probably heard where perhaps the marriage of Meghan Markle to Prince Harry, perhaps this is a political ploy that will allow the United Kingdom to reabsorb the United States. Yeah, spoilers, but they're coming, I guess. This theory got momentum online because Prince Harry's kids will be Americans as well as Brits. That's double trouble right there. So they could grow up to be president and king. Yeah, now you're thinking, you're like, oh yeah, true. Time even tweeted about it. Yeah, Time. It went viral, obviously, but they tweeted, quote, "They want America back, and this is how they'll do it." Some guy tweeted that. I was like, whew. GIF or no GIF? All right, no GIF. It's more powerful. We got it. Number 3. Diana's other child. Conspiracy theorists for a while now have sought out claims for the royal family wanting to take out Diana. So I guess, sure, some people do this with their lives. Egyptian businessman Mohammed Al Fayed, father of Diana's partner, who I mentioned earlier, began to talk and actually spread rumors that Diana was actually pregnant with his son's child, and that Prince Philip couldn't stand the fact that his grandson would have an Egyptian Muslim as a stepfather. It's pretty heavy stuff right there, right? Now, of course, post-mortem examinations did not find any evidence that, confirmed this, or that Diana was pregnant, but of course there's still many online who still stand by this conspiracy. Worth a mention, I'd say. People are wild. Number 2, shapeshifters. I warned you. This next theory, again, I wish I could claim for my own, but it was actually former BBC presenter David Icke. He has since revealed himself not as a lizard, but as a conspiracy theorist. And one conspiracy that surrounds the royal family, personally, it has me stunned. I was laughing at my desk for like 8 minutes. Here we go. Icke and a few others claim that the royal family is part of the Illuminati. Yeah, we love that. And all of them earn their power because their human ancestor mated with reptilian aliens. That's a real person's claim right there. That's a real person's real claim right there. David goes on and he says that the theory actually explains why the royal families are all obsessed with keeping their bloodlines clean with other royals. Sure, I guess that's where my mind went to first, okay. But the biggest what the f part of all of this has to be when David told the public that he knows people who have seen royal family members or people who have, high power. He's seen them change into reptiles and then back into human form again. He knows people who have seen that with their own eyes. So of course I had to bring that one up before our number one. Of course I had to. And finally, number one, leaked letters. We'll end off with some recent letter leaks. Never thought I'd be excited about this, but here we go. May 2018, the royal wedding. It was thought at the time that Meghan's father was absent because of the heart attack that he suffered prior, like right before. But a year or so later, it was revealed that Thomas Markle and the new Duchess weren't as close as it seemed. Thomas even spoke out against his own daughter. There was a huge scandal where Meghan spoke to Oprah as well, a huge tell-all. Basically, Meghan actually said to her father that if you tell me the truth about working with paparazzi, then we can all help and then we'll go from there and then work on rebuilding our father-daughter relationship. And he wasn't able to do that, and that for me has really resonated, especially now as a mother, end quote. So she's pretty much done with her dad's because he's, leaking letters. And to be fair, if my dad was working with paparazzi, showing them private letters or emails, I'd be upset too. There's no way though. There's no way. My dad can't even figure out the thumbprint, let alone email. Get out of here.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have King Charles I. Okay, so this is one that goes way back, and it really creeps me out. So King Charles I was tried for treason after the Civil War, and he ended up being beheaded in 1649. I guess in the 1600s, everyone was beheaded, so this wasn't necessarily abnormal, which certainly is weird, but that's a history lesson for another day. The weird part, however, is that apparently his head was sewn back on his body so that he could sit for a portrait, or it was perhaps supposed to be a sign of respect. Either way, it's weird and very gross. I feel terrible for whoever's job it was to do that, and I also feel bad for the artist who was forced to paint that. Talk about a little traumatic. It does certainly make sense though that people say that Charles' ghost still haunts a building, because there is no amount of haunting that could make up for being beheaded and then having your head sewn back onto your body. No thanks. In our number 9 spot today, we have the Kensington System. Queen Victoria's reign began in 1837 and it lasted up until her death in 1901. She was just 18 years old when she found herself on the throne, and it was all by chance, as she was actually 5th in line when she was born. This is all stressful enough, but certainly one of the worst parts of her upbringing was being brought up under the Kensington System. This means that her mother, Duchess Victoria of Kent, who created this system in order to control her daughter, literally just isolated her away from all of her friends and even from other family members, and apparently this was done to keep her quote-unquote pure. The Duchess would monitor her every move. She would decide who she could see and who she could speak to. Victoria only had 2 friends she could play with growing up, one being her half-sister and the other being her mother's attendant, Sir John Conroy. Victoria was even forced to share a room with her mother, and until she was the queen, she couldn't even walk down the hall by herself. In the end, Victoria placed a lot of blame on John Conroy for manipulating her mother. She even called him the demon incarnate. In our number 8 spot today, we have money making. We obviously know that the British royal family is rich. It certainly isn't a surprise to any of us to hear that. I mean, they made a tax-free $97 million in 2017, so it's not like they're struggling by any stretch of the imagination. And while there are claims that most of their income comes from their private estates and tourism, not everyone believes that this is the case. There are actually quite a few people who believe that the royal family costs British taxpayers a whopping $450 million a year. That's a ton of money. I truly do not know enough about anything to really choose a side, but it certainly is something to think about. I know with taxpayer money we pay a lot of salaries, and it's usually for a good reason, but $450 million is definitely next level. In our number 7 spot today, we have the change of name. So for us here in Canada, later in May, we have a day called Victoria Day. We set off fireworks, people have barbecues, it's like one of those types of holidays. Back in 1819, Queen Victoria, of course, before she was queen, was christened in a mostly private ceremony. It was quite small, her uncle only let a few people come, and at the time of this christening, her name was Alexandrina Victoria. Apparently during this time period, the name Victoria wasn't looked at as a regal name. It had French origin and was almost unique at the time. So flash forward to when Queen Victoria is first taking the throne, she begins getting advised to change her name. They thought that it would give her a better public image if she had a more traditional name. Clearly, as the history books and our Canadian calendars show us, Queen Victoria said, yeah, no thanks, I'm not gonna do that. In our number 6 spot today, we have the controversial history. The British royal family has quite a history of being perhaps less inclusive of others than would normally be accepted. There is actually quite an extensive history of racism in the royal family, and as we now know, especially after that Oprah interview last year, things haven't necessarily recently changed either. There have been certain gestures or small remarks made here and there that have definitely been a little out of touch, I'll call it. And unfortunately, Meghan Markle, being a biracial person, had to experience a lot of it firsthand. I mean, just to give a few examples, Prince Philip did ask Indigenous Australians if they still throw spears at each other, okay? And once, Princess Michael of Kent tried to apologize after being called out for saying something racist, and this is what she said, quote, "To call me racist, it's a knife through the heart because I really love these people. I even pretended years ago to be an African, a half-caste African, but because of my light eyes I did not get away with it, but I dyed my hair black." Okay, there is so much to unpack in that one sentence alone, but I have an extremely strong feeling that this apology probably wasn't well received, especially considering it lacked the whole apology part of an apology. In our number 5 spot today, we have Boy Jones. Okay, I've heard of people being called Boy Jones before, but little did I know Boy Jones was a very real and very creepy person. His full name was Edward Jones, and this little rascal basically stalked the Queen from 1838 to 1841. He managed to break into Buckingham Palace, and we aren't just talking about once. No, we are talking about many, many times. He knew exactly where to go and what to do, and once in the castle, he would hide under the Queen's sofa, he would sit on her throne, and worst of all, he would go through her clothing. Like, what a little creep. He even went as far as to steal her clothes, which is just stupid. Of course, taking evidence of your crimes is just bad practice. Thankfully, he did finally get caught, but man, a few years of sneaking in and sitting on the throne, that's crazy. In our number 4 spot today, we have messy relationships. Joan of Kent lived during the 14th century in England, and she was known as being one of the most beautiful women in all of England. She was said to be quite loving, but it is also said that she had quite a whirlwind and controversial love life. So basically, Joan was only 12 when she had her first marriage. I know, horrifying now, but as was the practice at the time. She married a knight named Tom Holland, but when Tom went to war, Joan was approached by another man, the son of the Earl of Salisbury, who asked for her hand in marriage. Despite the whole Tom situation, she said yes, because at this time there was no way for anyone to know who would be coming back from battle, and she just assumed that Tom had died. It was of course quite the shock to everyone when Tom ended up returning, very much alive, to find out about all of this. A legal battle followed, which Tom ended up winning, and him and Joan went on to raise 4 children. After Tom's passing, however, Joan would go on to marry again, to the dismay of many people. This time she would marry the son of King Edward III, and she went on to become the first Princess of Wales. In our number 3 spot today, we have royal affairs. There have been many, many rumors over the years about the British royal family and their extramarital affairs, and I'm saying that this goes way back. So far back that one of the first accusations of this within the royal family dates all the way back to King Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn. Since then, it has only continued with people such as Princess Margaret and Peter Townsend, Princess Anne and Commander Timothy Lawrence, and of course, Prince Charles and Camilla Parker Bowles, just to name a few. The latter of those definitely being the most famous, especially when Prince Charles was confronted about it by his wife at the time, the beloved Princess Diana. Apparently, Charles responded to the confrontation by saying, quote, "Well, I refuse to be the only Prince of Wales who never had a mistress." Maybe not the attitude to keep when speaking to your wife who you're cheating on. I don't know, just a thought. In our number 2 spot today, we have Prince John. This one is said to possibly be one of the darkest secrets of the British royal family. Prince John would have been the uncle of Queen Elizabeth II, but he passed before she was born. Prince John was the 6th child of King George V and Queen Mary, and it is said that he suffered from seizures, likely as a result of epilepsy, although it's hard to diagnose for certain because of all of the secrecy surrounding him and his illness. From the age of 4, when he had his first seizure, until his untimely and early death, Prince John lived in a separate estate where he was cared for by a governess. Many people have since criticized the royal family, calling their treatment of Prince John as callous or inhumane, like they were hiding him away for being ill. Of course, the palace was concerned with the monarchy's public image, and there was a belief at the time that royals shouldn't have any physical or mental ailments, although that of course is impossible. They also didn't include him in public events, which could have been another image thing, and also perhaps because of a worry that he might have a seizure at one of these events. At the end of the day, it was definitely a different time, but the idea of excluding him because he was ill truly is a very sad had thought. In our number 1 spot today, we have the flag at half-mast. It is normal for a flag to be flown at half-mast following a great tragedy, so this certainly is not a dark tradition that the royal family has, but it's the time that they did not do this that is dark that I want to talk about today. After Princess Diana's death, people everywhere began mourning the loss, especially considering how young she was and how it all happened so quickly and unexpectedly. But the crazy thing, or I guess when you really think about it, the potentially sinister thing about it, is that the royal family just continued on as if nothing happened. Of course, business still needs to be conducted at times despite grief, but for many of them, there simply was no grief. The flag at Kensington Palace wasn't lowered to half-mast until the people complained about it, because they obviously felt like it was a slight to the princess. There were no public statements made until a day before her funeral, and there were many people who believed that if no one spoke up about this, that there may have never been any action taken by the family at all.